Welcome, everyone, to the December 11th public hearing and public meeting for Virgin Town Planning Commission. And we are starting this meeting at 5:42 p.m. As a courtesy to everyone, please take a moment to make sure any of your electronic devices are in silent mode. Tonight we have Commissioner Larry McCray present by Zoom. Larry, can you hear me?
He's not on yet.
Not on yet. I'll check again. And in person, we have Lee Ballard, Kent Peterson, Cameron Spenlon, and myself, Darlene Pope. Okay, is Misty online at all?
No, give it a second, they're all.
Yeah, they're just joining, okay? While people are joining, let's begin our meeting with our pledge of allegiance, Kent.
I have made pledge allegiance to the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So has everyone had a chance, especially for October 9th, since let me know when Larry is on because we need him to vote in the minutes, okay?
I think Larry is even sharing.
Sherry, okay, Larry, can you? And we have 4 sets of minutes. 2, we needed Mr. McCray here so that we had a quorum. And Kent, I, and Larry will be voting on that. And then the November 13th minutes, and the November 20th minutes, if you were present, commissioners, you can vote on those.
Larry, are you there?
Larry, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but where's Larry?
So, go ahead, Larry.
All right, my computer is updating, so I couldn't log in.
That's okay.
And I did it on my phone, but then apparently I was just a guest, so somehow Sherry got it up on hers.
Okay, so we're good now.
Yes.
Correct. All right, so we're looking at the approval of minutes from October 9th. And I believe we needed you here to do the October minutes.
Yes.
The 9th and the 16th. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes? There's got to be Kent or Larry to motion in second for October 9th and October 16th.
Make a motion.
All right, and let's make sure that we're speaking into our mics. Make a motion to what?
Make a motion to approve the minutes for October 9th, 2024 and October 16th.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and for November 13th and November 20th, did everybody have a chance to look at those?
I did, and I have quite a few remarks on them. I don't know if you normally do it in meeting or whether I just hand them to.
You make your changes in there.
You make the changes. Oh, in the document, okay. I did make some of them. Okay, no brainer.
So did you want to hold off on those? Because I don't, did you have a chance? I know you just got the computer tonight. Would you like to have a chance to review those minutes?
I reviewed the meeting I was at, I didn't see any problem.
Okay.
If I get that,
So can we pass them if she goes in and?
You can pass them and she goes ahead and makes them.
Okay.
If you give them to me, I need them, like,
I'll give it to you before I leave tonight.
that would be great.
Thank you. Okay, so then may I have a motion to approve the minutes of November 13th and November 20th?
I will move that we.
Okay.
The minutes from November
13th and 20th.
13th and November 20th.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Darlene,
Yes, sir.
I've got some corrections on the November 20th minutes, but I'd never had a chance to get online and do it. I just read it as I was driving down here yesterday. So do we want to table that one?
Yeah, as long as you have them done by tomorrow morning.
Yeah, if you can get them done to me by tomorrow, that'll be great.
Okay,
All right, so I have a motion. Did I get a second?
Second,
And then all in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Oh, aye. Larry? Are you aye or nay?
well, on the 20th, if we're doing it as they'll be amended tonight, then yes, but as they stand, it would be a no. So do we want to table that, or?
I'd like to make a motion to approve as amended. November 13th and 20th minutes.
I second.
Second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay. And at this time, it's open forum, which means that anyone in our audience or the public may have 2 minutes to talk to us about any topic not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience who has an item for open forum? Not on the agenda. Not on the agenda. All right, come on up. Please remember to state your name.
My name is Pat Galvez. It's been a while, but a couple years ago, the Labrie Building Project on SR9, construction started by Nova Built. And I met a gentleman in here at a meeting named Rick, and the construction has ceased in recent months. And the property has become a huge tumbleweed field. They're about ready to harvest. And when the wind comes out of the north, I don't want them blowing into the residences by that property. So I don't know if there's a way to contact Nova Built or Labrie and tell them to come in and clean up their weeds and remove them, please. It's gonna be a mess. I've been working 11 years getting tumbleweeds off my property because they are very persistent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Skip Boysnall, I live in Desert Gardens down by the Sheep Bridge. And this has got to do with the paving project, which seems to have gone pretty good. It seems like it'll cut down on some of the dust and stuff. But my question, I have to apologize, my thoughts aren't really clear on this yet because they haven't finished it completely. Right down by the Nature Conservancy parking lot, which holds, I don't know how many vehicles, but a lot. It's never full. They have created a parking strip on both sides of the entrance to Nature Conservancy's parking lot that could hold potentially up to 20 cars. I can see some of the reason for that, but it creates a problem. Typically in the summertime, we'll have 1 to half a dozen cars that were parked on the bridge next to the concrete abutments. And that can be a problem at times, but now they've got them off-road, or the space is off the paved road, but there's enough room for at least 20 vehicles there. And I can't see the reason for it since there's such a big parking lot there. Now, what happens when we get the people parking on the bridge or near the bridge, they're immediately dumping into the Virgin River. They're going down the cliff, they're bringing ropes, they bring ladders, they leave trash when they get out of their cars, when they get back into their cars. And not to mention tampons, toilet paper, beer cans down in the river corridor. So I guess I have an interest in preventing people from parking that close to the river access. And I'm not sure how to go about it. On my property, which is just downstream, we put up no trespassing signs, which get ripped off almost immediately. And it's not really, I guess I'm giving up chasing people off the property. But what happens is when they get down past the bridge, they're coming up the cliff sides, either on my property or on my next door neighbor's property. And the problem with that is that more than once I've had a 200-pound 10-year-old that can't make the top climb. So either somebody's got to help them up or somebody's got to get them down.
And that's on private property.
That's on my property. It's a little easier getting up on Marks, but we've had crowds of 20 to 30 people coming up through there. And they just ignore the signs. And I don't want to fence off my property because so many people use it within the neighborhood. But I'm really at loose ends as to what to do at this point. Any suggestions, I welcome. Thank you.
Let me follow up with that and then get back to you.
Okay.
Let me ask a few questions, about these points you brought up, and then get back to you.
Okay.
I know there might be some people in town council or, who actually work on the project who might be able to give us some more information,
Okay.
as well as might be the Nature Conservancy. I'll have to see, you know, if they have any, but I'll do that and get back to you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Skip. Anyone else? All right, so now it's time for commissioners' comments. And last time, I think I started with Ms. Ballard, so this time I'm gonna start with Cameron. Cameron, do you have any comments you would like to make?
Yes. So I apologize for missing the work meeting, sorry about that.
Very.
Last month, we made the recommendation for the sign ordinance,
Correct.
and we talked about the size of the, entrance signs to subdivisions.
Correct.
Wasn't that 20 square feet that was on that? If I remember right, that was the sign number.
I'd have to look it up, something like that. And that is for the sign, not the structure.
That's what I recall, and so I went around and I measured all of the signs on all the entrances, and they're all bigger than 20 square feet, every single subdivision we have, including Desert Gardens, which Desert Gardens almost has the biggest of all of them. We measured the Desert Gardens face, it's 7'5" by 4 foot tall. That doesn't include the little top decorative piece or the side columns. So I think we need to bring that particular section back and make an adjustment to that.
We can discuss this more and then and reconsider. I'd be open to that.
That's what I'm asking for.
Yeah. I just want to reiterate, because I did go out and measure Desert Garden sign, and the sign itself is well over the 20 square feet.
I can go out there and measure it with you.
Not the structure, the actual words, Desert Garden.
Oh, okay, we can talk about this another time if you
Yeah.
want, but there's no way that we can make a sign ordinance and just measure words. Like, we can do faces, I get the faces part, but we can't just measure words, because, I mean, you look at, the RV parks, are you just gonna go out and measure all the words on that? And call that what its square foot is?
Well, and then existing signs are.
I didn't say anything about existing, I'm not arguing that point. I'm telling you that you cannot make us, there's nothing in the language of the sign ordinance that says you just measure the individual words. That seems completely unfathomable to me. And there's no language that indicates
All
that.
right, so I made a note of that.
Okay.
And I will add it to our discussion for our
Thank you.
next work meeting. Kent, do you have any commissioner comments?
No comments.
Lee?
I don't know who this should be directed at, but I guess all of us. I wanted to suggest two things about working on draft ordinances. One is that the Word doc, there should always be a Word doc version, and that it should have line numbers, which makes it so much easier for us to go through things and identify where we are. The subdivision ordinance that we've been working on or reading. It's really difficult to navigate because it doesn't have line numbers. And they can be removed before final passage or at final passage, but they just make things so much easier. And the other thing is that it would be nice if we could keep one single working Word doc for everybody's comments. Instead of having to jump back and forth from document to document. Anyway, those are my suggestions.
All right, thank you. Larry, do you have any commission comments?
No comments.
All right, I have one. Actually, two. The first one is there is a dark sky lighting summit on January 30th. It is, more details are to come. It will be in St. George. The mayor informed me of this and she will get updated information. It's a free event. And there are 5 topics. And so I thought I would just provide you all
Thank you.
with the content. And if you're interested in attending this summit, put it on your calendar, okay? Attendance is free. The second thing is, I want, because we have members of the public and our audience tonight. Okay. I just wanted to apprise the public of how when we have a public hearing, what our role is and what we do next and what the steps are, right? And during public hearing, the role of the commission is to listen to the public, take notes about the statements made. If it is the first time an item is up for public hearing, then during our next regularly scheduled work meeting, we take all of those comments that we hear and take notes on. We read and address not just the comments that are made publicly, but the ones that were submitted to the clerk in writing. And then when we have our next regular meeting, which would, then we vote. And before we vote, we'll give a rationale for our vote and a summary of how we address the topics. And I have an example that I'd like to share with you. Okay. There's one more thing. If an item, because we have some items that have had 3 public hearings. So if there's a public hearing on that item, we've had several work meetings to discuss previous public hearing, dig into it. If it's beyond the first public hearing, then we may choose to vote on the same night as that second or third public hearing. Okay, and a good example of this is there was a public hearing about removing lodging from commercial last November. And in the November work meeting, we discussed it and decided that it needed a second public hearing in order to notify affected parties. In this case, when this comes up for its second public hearing in January, we will probably go ahead and vote on it because we've already gone through had a meaty discussion of it. And the reason for this is to ensure that all the points, that all the public comments, whether it's written or oral, in a public hearing or in writing, is carefully considered. Okay? That's the only things I had.
Can I change my mind and say one more thing?
Sure.
I just wanted to say how sad I was to hear about John Brown death. He served the town for over a dozen years. 8 years of those were as mayor. And he was just such a kind and caring official.
I'm sorry, when town passed?
Last Friday, yeah. Yeah. Pretty sad.
Thank you for that.
Are
there arrangements?
Yes, Saturday morning, Saturday at 11 here. Here.
All right,
Thank you.
all right. So at this time, I'd like a motion to close the public meeting and open our public hearing.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so we're moving to the public hearing. Please make sure you state your name. And if there are multiple comments on the same item, rather than repeating similar things, make statements like I agree, or I concur, okay, and then build on and add on. And we will be taking copious notes, all right? So, the first item up for public hearing is, an ordinance amending and restating in its entirety, chapter 18 of the Virgin Uniform Land Use Code to establish subdivision regulations that meet the requirements established by the Utah State Code. This ordinance, comes down to us, or the charge to create this ordinance comes down from our state legislature. It is due by December 31st. Does anybody have any public comment on that new subdivision ordinance? And we have two versions posted, an A and a B. All right, thank you. Our second item, A2, is an ordinance deleting chapter 42 resort zone from Virgin's Uniform Land Use Ordinances. This is the second public hearing on this item, as is the second public hearing on the ordinances. And so therefore, we will be voting on those two tonight. The reason for this one was it's similar to the lodging one in commercial, we wanted to notify the affected party. Is there anybody who, the only thing that used to be in resort zone was, Zion River Resort. And, this just makes it, included in the more expansive highway resort zone. All right. Any comments on that? All right. Third ordinance up for public hearing is to update our code to include e-bikes where bicycles are currently mentioned in our code. And those are in 3 spots. And one under conditional uses in highway resort. And in the same chapter under shared paths, shared uses paths, there's 2 mentions there. Did anyone have any comment on that ordinance? Okay, and the last item for public hearing is a zone change. I'm sure that, I just want to make sure I pull that's a new one. The right one here, here it is. And that item is the zone change of B-2-1-21-2342. It's currently rural residential, and the current owner is asking for it to be changed to commercial. And is there any public comment on this item?
Commission, there is, stuff in your folders
Yes,
that I handed out.
yes,
Please look for that.
yeah.
My name is Cindy Espin and we live in Desert Gardens. We moved to Virgin about 14 years ago. And when we first moved in for many years, I was quite active in the town's activities and working with everybody else on the general plan and things of that nature. at that time, the goal, when I look back at it, and they still say that, the goal of the town was to, you know, keep the neighborly, rural, quaint atmosphere that Virgin was, why many of us maybe moved here. And at that time, the idea being that on the east end of town was more commercial and business and that sort of thing, and on the west end of town, more rural residential with the horses and the chickens and all of those people. But, and there's been exceptions, and as the time's gone on, there's been more exceptions the last few years. My comment being, I guess I would just ask that I think it's important that we really try to keep the quaintness and areas where there's homes to not insert commercial into the midst of it, because it's a whole different environment. We moved out there for the quietness, the quaintness, the openness, and when you start bringing businesses in, it becomes a whole new environment. So I just ask that we consider that when you make your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can wait, you guys are all taking notes.
Everyone, we're still taking.
Okay, my name's Pat Galvez. I agree with Cindy. A property, a parcel requesting to be commercial. And that can happen, but there's no other known information to the public. On the municipal code, chapter 30, zones and uses, the 30.06, I found a chart saying what uses are. And under commercial highway zone, it has 20 listed uses. 14 are permitted uses, 5 are conditional use permit uses, and 1's prohibited. So I hope you would know what the projected plan for the commercial change could be, would be, and that impact of that type of a business, because we as residents don't know. A year or more ago at a prior meeting, I don't know if it's planning and zoning or town hall, there was a proposed change from rural residential to commercial. And one of the reasons given then was that there's properties nearby of the same commercial status. So it's not really a significant change for that area of town. But I never accepted that as a valid point. Because on this particular parcel, you have rural residential to the west and across the highway. And I think the value of rural residential is as important as any adjacent or nearby commercial properties in the area. Please don't give commercial businesses more value over the residents in the residential areas. And this parcel where it's located now is in a 65-mile-an-hour speed zone. There's other commercial properties in town in both 55 and 65 mile-per-hour speed zones that have turning lanes. I don't know if any commercial business in here will be required to have turning lanes, but that house next door, the lot next door is a family farm residential. Limited number of people accessing State Route 9 for that residence. If there's a commercial business at this proposed location, you're gonna have a lot more traffic turning in and off the highway and gonna have a lot more risk. So please consider those points. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's Carol Boisnot. And I agree with what Cindy and Pat have said. But you'll make a decision based on information that you have and where the poles are. What I do ask is if it is to go commercial, if we can make sure there are ordinances in place that will mitigate the noise of commercial areas. And the lighting will be such that it's compliant for dark skies to keep those elements of a residential area residential, and also that the traffic be addressed proactively rather than reactively. As it stands, the way the Labrie project is being constructed, it will heavily impact the entrance into Desert Garden. So if you just keep all those things in mind, if it does commercial, that goes commercial, that there are ordinances in place to keep it very operational for those people who live in that area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Michelle Kellen, and I am one of the owners of the property that we're discussing currently. I just wanted to talk on a couple of points that have just been mentioned, as well as a few of the points that have been mentioned since we started this process a year and a half ago. One thing that's really important for me to acknowledge publicly is that we have submitted documentation to the town, allowing the town to know that we are willing to do a town agreement. There has been a lot of things that have been projected upon our property because of things that have happened with other properties in this town. And I just want to acknowledge that that's not quite fair. Our neighbor, that's been discussed multiple times, his name is Casey Shivers. He has been communicating with me since I purchased the property and has never had any public comment or private comment to the town saying that this was going to derail his ability to improve the property or have any concern about being next to something commercial. Secondarily, UDOT continues to be brought up. There is a speed limit issue, but until our change for the property, UDOT can't do any access changes, any speed limit changes. As far as they're concerned, as commercial property grows down the highway and there is need for more turn-ins, they will be able to revisit the speed limit there. The other thing that's not being mentioned is 3/4 of a mile down the road is Mesa Road. That already has a town plan in place to have a roundabout, which in general is going to completely reduce the speed in that area. Since we've started this process, a lot of the concerns have been hypothetical, and we haven't been able to address any of those concerns publicly because there's always going to be more hypothetical questions on top of that to respond to what's not being public as far as what our idea for the property is. That is not a requirement for a rezone change. The zone change happens and then the application process comes to the town where we can discuss all of the things that are concerns, very many of them which we already know. My new plan for our property, once it goes commercial, completely respects the needs of Desert Gardens, which is, by the way, the closest building, the closest home will be over 100 feet from our closest potential building. We acknowledge light pollution and in fact have a really fantastic plan for that. And also the business concept that we have is completely non-reliant on foot traffic. So it's not as though a restaurant, a movie theater, something along those lines is going to be 50 feet from a home, invading the sound and light, of people in the, area. I hope the town just acknowledges our ability to communicate. For the last year and a half, we have always been available. We have always heard concerns, and we've always been respectful to all of those, and we've always communicated those things back. The last thing that we ever wanted to do was rezone to upset the town. We walked in there with some ideas initially because we wanted to bring something community-based. Once those ideas were withdrawn because of backlash by the community, we changed that concept completely, and we'll be able to discuss those things further if and when a rezone occurs, so as to not have any further issues with that. I just want to say publicly that we very much care about Desert Gardens, not just Desert Gardens, Casey Shivers. There's a property next to me that will most likely look towards rezone. This area is growing, unfortunately, for some, positively for others, but we want to be part of the respectful, positive growth and not take advantage of the land. We've already acknowledged that the town and its peoples do not want to see vacation rentals, do not want to see another gas station. We understand the things that are being looked at under a negative light. We're not blind to that, and we acknowledge it, and we care about it as well. I have a business in Springdale. I very much follow all of the rules that Springdale has put into place, and I intend to do the same thing here. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments? All right. And I'm going to assume there are none. Right, just want to make sure that nobody is left out. Okay, so, do I have a motion to close the public hearing and to reopen the public meeting?
Sorry, I move we close the public hearing and reopen the public meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Right. All right. And commissioners, please make sure, I saw all commissioners reading the written correspondence that was handed to us. And any comments of that, and be prepared for our full discussion at our next board meeting. All right, let me just find one thing here. There, why my agenda keeps disappearing. All right, so that means we are in the portion of the meeting that is our public meeting. And we have two items to vote on, and we need to approve our planning commission calendar for 2025, not 2026. I like to plan, but I'm not that far ahead. Please note, commissioners, see, I'm not, I think I'm not on copies of that for everybody. So I ran off, so you can look at it when we get to that item. Right. The first item is, however, which the two versions of the subdivision ordinance, okay? I know several of us here, not all of us, have spent quite a few hours, looking at these here. And, Strike, Riker is here, who is the author of option A, and, option A was sent to our town attorney, and then that became option B. And, it was then given back to Riker, and he has some additional comments. And what we're hoping to do is, to discuss any thoughts we have on this and come up with a recommendation for approval, and we can have, recommendations that do not trigger another public hearing, because both documents are posted for this public hearing. And it wouldn't be a new thing. It would be, one or the other, but there's some places where we need to, adjust some things. Right, or would you say that's a correct summary? Okay. All right, so. Do I have a commissioner who would like to begin this discussion? I don't want to have an hours-long discussion, but I really think we need to have some discussion on this before.
I have some questions and some
Okay,
suggestions. First of all, maybe Riker could explain what would happen if we were to miss our deadline on this.
So the state hasn't specified as far as a consequence for not adopting it by the indicated date. However, the funding for this project comes from the Department of Workforce Services, and that funding expires on the 31st.
Oh. Okay. That's not good. I was pretty fond of the D version. Actually, it wasn't so much because I had read through them both and decided I preferred it, but more because it had already been through the town attorney. However, by the time I got to the end of it and saw your comments, I kind of regretted my choice of planning to go with B, but I nevertheless have a bunch of suggested changes to B. And I would also like to figure out a way to incorporate all of the things that you suggested be done to B. So none of them are new. It's all sort of a, like you said, a mixing and mashing of the two. So I don't think there will be anything that would not have been already seen by the public in one form or another. So I have a list, and I don't think you want to read this, probably.
I think, because you and I, we've touched base, and I touched base with Riker, and I think we see a lot of the same not concerns, but things we would like to fix, like the sequence of approvals and submittals. And there's, the issue of the DRC being the final plat. It's like it goes through the town engineer, the final plat, and then the town attorney, and then the DRC. And so they're just the third set of eyes on it.
Okay, that brings me to one of my questions, which is I thought that the town attorney would be the final look because he has to record and do various other legal things.
So I think in the, let me just double check here. In the original draft, we had suggested that
The final approval?
the final approval be the development review committee. When we took this to the town council, they had requested that it be either, I believe it was either the town attorney or the DRC. There was an option there, I can't remember what the.
I thought it was zoning administrators.
It might have been zoning administrator, but, because it can't be, ultimately, it just can't be the planning commission or the town council.
Because the town council can't be it.
It could be the town attorney, if that's what the town would prefer, we can do that, we've done that with other communities. In subdivision ordinance B right now, it indicates the town engineer. We would advise against that, just because contracted engineers don't necessarily have the same type of immunity that the city itself has or that the town attorney would have. So that wouldn't be the way that we'd wanna go there.
One thing, having read your most recent comments, I was a little confused about not having, so B pretty much had 3 review cycles, the preliminary plat, then the construction or the subdivision improvements plans, and then the final plat. And you're suggesting, and I agree, that subdivision improvements should be part of the preliminary plat process. But does that mean we'd end up with just 2 review cycles?
So, what those are, the way that B is set up currently is it establishes 3 review processes, each with 4 review cycles. However, the way the state code specifies things, the subdivision improvement plans have to be included in either the preliminary plat application or the final plat application.
Okay.
The state code says that the review of those public infrastructure improvements cannot happen outside of the review cycles indicated for preliminary or final plat.
Okay, so it can't have its own final vote.
Correct, and the way that they've set it up in the state code is the application that's attached to the subdivision improvement plans, whether it's preliminary or final, has a longer review window than the one that does not. And so, you'll notice in B, the number of days indicated.
Yes,
That's why it's one is 60, I think. Yeah.
there's a few places, a lot of them.
Yeah, so there's a few places where it indicates, I think it's 15 days. Those timelines are for municipalities with more than 5,000 residents. For municipalities with less than 5,000 residents, for the application that includes the subdivision improvement plans, they have 40 business days. And then for the application that does not include the subdivision improvement plans, they have 30 business days.
So if it were in the preliminary plat, that would have the longer one,
Correct,
but if we chose to put it in the final plat, that would have the longer one.
correct.
Because the problem is, in my mind, that not only would we have to somehow hit our 1 meeting a month in planning and zoning for the preliminary plat, we'd also have to get it through the DRC before we could vote.
So let me clarify some things on that.
Okay.
The way that the ordinance is set up is it separates the review process from the approval process. So the review process is going to happen at the level of your DRC anyway. For that preliminary plat with the subdivision improvement plans, it's still gonna have to be during that 40 business day window. It's going to have to be reviewed by your town engineer, by all those entities that have an interest in the improvements that are being installed. And then after they have gone through that entire review process with up to 4 review cycles, then at that point it is forwarded to the planning commission for their review and approval.
And
And
that's,
that's when it goes.
that's preliminary plat.
That is preliminary plat, yes.
Would you recommend the subdivision development,
Subdivision improvements
plan be with the preliminary plat?
So for most municipalities that we've worked with, they've opted to have the subdivision improvement plans at the preliminary plat
It
stage.
makes more sense to me.
It can be either, however, if we were to make that change, I think that would be significant enough to require, that would change the process. And I think you'd have to redo the order.
Where is it? But it's currently nowhere. Is it?
So in ordinance
B,
A, it is currently at the preliminary plat stage.
and ordinance B, it's
It's a
its own.
separate, it's its own process.
And you feel that by moving that, which we have to do, right, that would trigger a big enough.
Well, if you were to place it at the final plat stage,
Oh,
if you were to switch it from preliminary to final.
I think it makes more sense, not that I wanna give us more work to do.
I agree.
But, it makes more sense in the preliminary, seems fairer to everyone. Because it's much easier to deal with any concern at the beginning than it is at the end. That's just my thought.
I agree. Can I ask can the items that are listed in this, I'm looking at B, as things that can be required with the preliminary plat, I guess that will be expanded if we consider that the preliminary plat includes the subdivision.
Can I ask
Plan.
which,
I'm looking at B.
B, what part of B?
Oh, just, it says what needs to be submitted to the preliminary plat somewhere. Anyway, I was just wondering if, whatever's in that list, if we would have to add things to it in order to make sure that certain things were on the checklist, or can our checklist have more than what's necessarily covered there?
so with this ordinance, we've submitted a subdivision submittal checklist, which is what the application will be built off of. In draft A, in the subdivision draft A, it references a subdivision submittal checklist.
Yeah,
That contains all of the requirements for preliminary plat, final plat, and the subdivision improvement plans. In draft B, I believe it references a subdivision application checklist.
yeah,
The language is a bit different, and we could change the title of the subdivision submittal checklist to match that.
okay,
Um,
and attach it to B.
Correct, so what we've done here is, the town could choose, if they wanted to include those requirements in the ordinance itself. However, that means, because the requirements are so strict from the state, where the town has to catch each and every one of those checklist items during that first review cycle, and once an application is submitted, it has to comply with the existing ordinance. So if the town sees changes, that requires, if it's in the ordinance, if the requirements are in the ordinance, that requires the town to draft an amended ordinance. That has to go through the whole process to change. So what we've done with some communities is we've separated the submittal requirements, because the state already requires you have a checklist. We've separated those requirements into a policy or a submittal checklist.
And so that checklist, is that going to be recommended and adopted along with the rest of the ordinance?
So I would recommend that it doesn't have to follow the same
Okay,
process. I would just recommend that it be, that it follow the process of a policy. So whatever the
Okay.
town's process is for that, I believe that goes to the town council.
yeah,
If anything, would be more of a
But-
resolution. If anything, would it be more of a resolution? I mean, you
Oh.
know, it wouldn't be
Yeah.
part of the code.
no, it would be.
No, it wouldn't be part of the code, and there wouldn't be like fees or anything associated with the submittal checklist. It would just be outlining what those requirements are in a format that if the town recognizes that there are additional things that need to be added, they can do so more efficiently.
Yes, I think that's great. I also would like to us to review the checklist rather than just sending that duty on to the council.
It came attached to the first go round,
Yeah,
but it was not attached to this go round.
it should, so it hasn't changed.
It hasn't changed.
No, it is.
So I can go back, I have my list of when the first public hearing was, and I can easily put that in our folder.
Glue it onto the other.
Yeah.
to be, if that's what we end up with.
If not, I can always resend it to Crystal.
That would be easier. Thank you. And then I can just drop it in there. It will be in December's folder. That's okay.
Okay,
All right. Stryker. I know I had talked to you about we had talked about accepting B with the modifications that we talked about, which none of which I talked to multiple people who felt it would not trigger a rehearing. I just had one that I want to run by you that I would like to add, and that is, the other recommendation is that we are going to revisit some aspects of this ordinance at a later date.
Yeah, so that wouldn't necessarily have to be included in the motion, it can be, but it wouldn't be required to be, the town can always revisit the ordinance.
but we want to encourage ourselves to do it right.
I would like to, personally, I would like to, but then I don't know the other commissioners. Larry, do you have anything you would like to add to this discussion?
I think we covered what I was concerned about. It was the only area where we had a whole lot of input, and that was who was going to have the final approval. But I think we've discussed it, so I'm good.
So I'd like to have the commissioners, all of you, input on this proposal. So I would like to think about proposing approval of option B with the following recommendations. And one is things we always say, housekeeping items like spelling, formatting, and renumbering of sections following 18.14.
Reference,
Yeah, reference corrections, yeah. And that the timelines for submissions and approvals be amended to match state code for municipalities with a population less than 5,000. That in 18.14 F1, LUA be amended to read DRC instead of town engineer as LUA for final plat approval. And that the title and last whereas of the ordinance be amended to match the current structure of the Virgin Land Use Code, because it references a chapter in municipal code, and we don't do that. We're currently in Virgin, and this code is for right now, and so it should go into blue. And perhaps the most important item, that any other recommendations of Sunrise Engineering, who by the way is Roger, be incorporated into the final document. And the checklist. The checklist
from A, oh, we're not gonna.
that's not part of the ordinance, correct?
Correct, that's not part of the ordinance.
There's a language in there.
Yeah, so, I mean, I would suggest that one of the conditions be that the title of that checklist be changed to match what it is titled in the ordinance.
Title, checklist?
And then if it's all right,
It's only one checklist, right?
correct, so the document that I composed has one checklist that contains all requirements, and then it's just
Be
sections off.
changed to match the language of ordinance B.
And then if it's all right with you, I'd like to go through the comments that I have, just so that we'll have discussed them in the meeting.
Yes,
Um,
Karen,
I just had some questions, right?
absolutely.
So I know that we're doing this because Utah code changed, right? So as I was reading down through this, one of the things that I noticed was like boundary line adjustments. That used to be something that cities weren't allowed to regulate. Is that changed in Utah code? It used to be that simple lot line adjustments, joining of properties just didn't have anything to do with the town.
So that is something that the town can regulate now. They can regulate, they include processes for lot line adjustments or for joining lots. joining contiguous properties. There are some requirements in state code, those have been included in here.
What I read in the state code most recently said that, that the town was not to regulate a boundary adjustment unless there were dwellings involved. One or more dwellings involved. But maybe
So I can go and research that and make sure that's correct. I know that there have been several communities that we've worked with that have adopted regulations for boundary line adjustments.
Just because the community adopted doesn't mean it's.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree, if you could do that.
I can verify that.
And then if the town is allowed to regulate that, and as it's written here, is that something that the county is going to get on board with? Because all I have to do to get a lot line adjustment is go down to the county and get it recorded and it's done.
So it all depends on, at least in my experience, it all depends on what the regulation of the town is. And so there are things that we could place in the requirements that would say something to the effect of, basically prohibiting that a document be recorded or filed with the county recorder if it doesn't have a signed and notarized approval from the town.
And would that be a part of the ordinance, or is that just an agreement with the county?
That's probably something we want to include in the ordinance. My suggestion there, because part of this I don't recall, but part of this might have been what was previously included in your subdivision code.
Yeah.
So my suggestion would be, I can look into that and provide some suggestions there. But that may be outside the scope of at least the DWS funding that addresses this, but I can provide suggestions to that, and the town can determine if they'd like to pursue that
Okay, that might
and make changes.
And then I did have a question on this, it was like a 2 parcel, so it's B1A. And it's the division of land waiver. So it used to be. It used to be that you were in the state allowed you to divide your property. To split off a portion of your property once every 15 years without. You could just do it and the towns couldn't stop you. And because, a lot of people did that, they own property, they divided off a section for their kid, right? So my question with the 2 parcel division of land waiver process. Was again, is that allowed now, or is there still rules of the state that allow property owners to make those splits every so often?
That's something I have to look into again. This is a leftover piece from your existing code. So we didn't make changes to that section. So we didn't make changes to the boundary adjustment review process or the land waiver, subdivision of land waiver process.
I'm sorry, I just.
No, it's good. They're good questions. So, I mean, that's something that I can definitely look into and provide suggestions on that. And I can assist the town with that as we go forward there outside of this amendment.
Yeah.
I can point you to the code about the boundary adjustments. It is 10-985-23, number 3. 10-985. It says a parcel boundary adjustment is not subject to review of a land use authority unless the parcel includes a dwelling and the land use authority's approval is required under another section. So I think
Not or, and, so you have both.
and I think that all we would have to do is add the terms, to that section. If one or more dwellings are on the property.
Yeah, both those sections are saying A and B. Like you said, that must, the select board and their are, so.
So we can, if we want to clean that up, or we need to clean that up, we can do that.
I'm not concerned with that, I'm not, I was just asking.
Yeah. All right. Do you have other questions, Karen, at this time?
No.
And do you have a question? Lee? He wants to go through his comments,
Oh, right, yeah, okay.
all right?
That's
So
fine.
okay,
Right. The first comment that I have,
page 8.
yes, under 1802 F2.
1802.
At the very end of that point, there's a reference to 1814B. And that should be 1814B.
Yeah,
That is the 1814B references bonus densities and things like that, so. Looks like that, the typo.
that's type of, it's covered by housekeeping.
Yeah,
And I think,
a lot of those.
There's a few, yeah,
yeah, there's several of those.
additional ones, 1808A, 2A. It says Virgin B staff, it should just, I believe he's intended that to be Virgin staff.
Can we be
We should
more
be more
specific?
It's 18.08A2A.
Yeah, we know about, that's not our question.
Oh.
Sorry.
No, we just think perhaps it should go to the clerk and then send it to whoever needs it.
Wait,
So this is the concept plan.
Yeah,
yeah. 1802,
so that all new applications go through one place and
Correct, yeah, so,
get
so you wanna change it from Virgin staff to the
to
clerk?
the clerk.
My suggestion would be to leave it as Virgin staff. Just because if the town gets to the point where they hire somebody else to handle the application process, the ordinance does not have to be changed, but the town by policy and process can choose to designate, to include that in.
so we can do that outside the ordinance.
The town can have an SOP that's not even approved, but just an SOP of the office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cause it's not just gonna be me, it's also gonna be Shiloh's gonna be dealing with it, so it's. There's two of us in the office, so I can just staff when we have it.
Yeah, and that'll prevent you running into, timeline issues too, so there's a timeline associated with that, if Crystal happens to be gone. And you've got it locked onto her job, then it kind of prohibits the town from moving forward.
That was my concern, was about the timeline, but you're right, that it could go both ways.
And then when we see the word the town. What does that mean?
The town of Virgin, that's why it should be
It
capitalized.
says the town will do
It
this.
is capitalized.
It is.
Yeah, so when it's saying the town, it's referencing the town of Virgin. I believe it states that in.
And so it could be any official in town?
So those are things. It's worded that way so that the town, like standard of practice, as a state
Correct.
can decide how they want to proceed with that.
Okay,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
We didn't want to lock the town into a specific way of doing things. If it was going to,
All right.
make it so they couldn't do it efficiently.
Thank you, continue.
The next one I have is going to be on 1810 preliminary plat under A 3.
4. A3.
So I wanted to do under A3E.
Okay. The breakdown of fees.
Yeah, so it's gonna go in between E and 4, right there. We need to include, this is from the language from draft A.
Oh, I get it.
But it just needs to state An applicant shall submit an application including the preliminary plat, subdivision improvement plans, and all required documentation and information.
So would that be an E or F?
So it would probably replace 4 and turn 4 into 5.
Got it.
Because it would be outside of that,
Okay.
you know, one tier up.
I was gonna suggest that we put that before the town checks the submittal for completeness. And just put it all under number 4, I don't know, because it seems to go longer, it gets submitted and then it gets checked for completeness, but okay.
Yeah, so it would be its own bullet point, it would become number 4, and then the town checks the submittal for completeness would become 5.
And 5 would be 6.
Exactly, so, yeah.
I got it.
And then in that same section, if you scroll down to 6. There's a reference to 15 business days, but for 10(9)A 604.2, 5(a)II in state code. This should be 30 business days for a municipality under 5,000.
Correct.
And if you go down to 7B, there is a reference that it is titled 18.10A8A. That does not exist. That reference in this ordinance.
I think that there's a couple of those, and I wonder if we'll probably be able to figure out what was
Yeah,
intended.
there's a few of those things. I think we just need to go through and make sure they're referencing the correct sections.
Yeah,
A few of them are just 1 or 2 letters off, and so just if. That would be one of our recommendations, that all of those instances be corrected.
There's a lot of those.
Yeah.
And a lot of days, and we're absolutely sure of the days here, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So under 7, still, if you go down to G, not G, H1, 7H1 in that same section.
Uh-huh.
So this is talking about how long the applicant has to respond. It currently states 20 days, but under 10(9)A 604.28E, it should be 40 business days.
And that's what's in A. I mean, option.
Correct, that comes from option A and then from state code, and then, in that same paragraph, it references 15 days. And that should be 40 business days, based on the same state code reference. And under 2, so just the next paragraph down, again, it references 20 days, that should be 40 days. And then it references 35 days, that should be 60 days.
And that 60 includes that with the subdivision improvement plan.
Correct, yeah, so we're referencing 40 business days, this is for preliminary plat, and that's because the way this ordinance is structured, it is to include preliminary plat to include subdivision improvement plans
Yeah.
in the preliminary plat review process, as
Okay.
part of that application.
Thank you.
And then if you continue down to 10(A).
Yeah.
There's a reference to state code here at the end of that paragraph. The reference included is 10(9)A 604.28, that needs to be 11. And then under the preliminary plat approval process, B1. It currently states for preliminary plat application, the administrative land use authority shall be the Virgin Planning and Zoning Commission. It needs to state for preliminary plat applications and subdivision improvement plans, the administrative land use authority shall be the Virgin Planning and Zoning Commission. Just so that we're clear that that is to be included there.
Thank you.
And then,
On 11, just up from where you are those days correct? Cause we've changed almost all the other days. So we went to
the
B,
fourth and final review.
yeah,
20 and 10 business days for the board to final review.
I just know it's been changing almost every one of those days, so I didn't know.
So that's the 20 business days does need to change to 40 business days. The 10 business days will stay the same.
So 20 needs to change to what?
40. And then on 18.12, there's that section that references subdivision improvement plans. It would be my suggestion that the entirety of 18.12 is removed and replaced with 18.10C, a subdivision draft A. I can read that for you.
1810.
Yes,
Draft A.
18.10C.
Just add that to the previous section.
No, change stopping it.
So we would remove 18.12 in its entirety and replace that with, basically add C onto 18.10, which states preliminary plat subdivision, preliminary plat submission requirements. The preliminary plat shall be prepared by a licensed land surveyor or engineer and shall include the subdivision improvement plans and shall be consistent with the subdivision submittal checklist maintained by the town. That says subdivision submittal checklist in draft A, but we would revise that to be the title that's included in draft.
So we
A.
would lose 12. right?
Correct, 18.12 would go away.
So 14 would become 12.
Correct, and that would correct the
That will correct the other.
number.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that also may correct some of the reference issues in the draft as well.
Okay. And we'll have to double check all those references.
Correct, yeah, and I'll make sure that those match. Originally in draft A, there was. So in draft A, 18.12 didn't exist,
Mhm.
and the final plat section was 18.12.
Okay.
And so it should
It should-
correct most
it
of
should
those,
correct.
but we'll verify that to make
Yes.
sure.
Okay.
And then under,
So, hold on. So removing 1812 and all the items thereafter does remove a lot of language. Is this language, do you see it as not needed? Do you see it as violative of state law?
I think we're relocating one.
so the language in this is creating a separate approval process for subdivision improvement plans. Or a separate review process, for subdivision improvement plans. It's specifically removing it from the preliminary plat application and the final plat application. And making it its own thing, which violates state code.
Okay.
And so my concern is leaving any of that in there. There are multiple references where it says that, like it says, once the preliminary plat has been approved. So it's stating that they get approval of preliminary plat before they even have to submit subdivision improvement plans. And that is not what the ordinance is intended to do. And then it also says that, they do not have to have subdivision improvement plan approval prior to applying for final plat approval. You don't want they need to have completed the entire approval process before they go to the next step. That would cause issues for the town, and that's again, outside of what state code is stating.
But the rigor that's in here is reflected in the preliminary plat process.
So, yeah, so the preliminary plat application in its entirety is reviewed in the same manner. The only thing that's different is that the approving entity, while it's still gonna go through the DRC, the approving entity is the planning and zoning commission. And so they wouldn't have approval of their subdivision improvement plans or their preliminary plat until the planning commission had seen it. And made a motion that way.
Does that answer your concern?
Yeah.
Thank
I
you,
was just wondering why we were removing all that language.
because it doesn't match the state code. I think it's-
Yeah,
Right? And then we have more numbers.
Yeah, so under 1814, we've already talked about that would change to 1812, but 1814
Five.
B5. It references 20 days, it should be 30 business days. Because this is the application that does not include the subdivision improvement plans.
What about in 6? Does that remain 20?
Yes, that one would, that has to do with the water conveyance facility, and that is the town notifying the water conveyance facility, so it's not the review process itself. And so that stays the same, that doesn't actually stay good. But under 5A, there's another reference to 20 that just needs to be changed to 30.
Then,
Under 13.1
well,
or 13A1.
8. 14, 8.
So, yeah, so 8 references a title opinion. That doesn't, there's nothing in statement that I have to change there, so if he's good with that, then that number doesn't need to
Okay,
change.
13.
13A1. Both references to 20 days need to be changed to,
40.
so this one would be changed to 30 days.
30.
Because it is the final plat application.
So one has 40 in your notes.
Yes, I saw that, but it should be.
It should be
It
30.
should match what for final plat, the town will only have 30 business days to review.
Okay, and number 2 would also be 30 days?
Correct, and
And
the,
what would the second one be?
would be 50 days.
50 days. Are you making all these notes?
Yeah,
And, okay. And then F1. On page 18. That's your last comment.
so, under 15A, there's another reference to
Okay.
1090-604.28, and it just needs to be 11 instead of 8.
Okay,
And then on 16, that needs to be the 20 business days there, needs to be changed to 30 as well.
all right, we have 40.
Yeah,
And is the 10 the 10?
the 10 will stay the same.
Okay,
And then yes, under F1, that needs to be changed, town engineer needs to be changed to development review committee
or DRC.
or DRC. Would you prefer to be DRC or development
I
review
think,
committee?
well, in the document, they use DRC.
Yeah, I think so.
Or I can put development review committee and then DRC. in parentheses.
Well, the first time it's used, that would be this good thing to do, I think.
Okay, I can do that.
Anytime you use an acronym. I think that was the last comment you made, so after the statement.
That's the last comment.
So are you correcting the ones that had the wrong number of days as we go? Is that-
He is.
He is.
I
You're
do.
correcting it and you're gonna put that up on the.
Yeah, so I'll make,
So he's gonna make the clean copy for us.
Oh, good,
Right?
okay.
yes,
Wonderful.
And this is for next Tuesday's meeting.
yeah, so I'll have it to Crystal tomorrow.
I'll make Kristen very pleased. All right. Any other comments? At this moment? Okay, so. Do I have a brave soul? Who would like to read this? Technically, I don't make
Does-
motions.
Right, but does Riker not, can't we just say all the changes that we've agreed to with him? Rather than try to read out our list of them?
So,
But would that work?
Are we motioning this? I thought you said we'll keep making a clean copy and we're talking about it in our next meeting.
No, this is due by December 31st.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the subdivision, ordinance, proposal B with the recommended changes as discussed with, Sunrise Engineering. Those changes include changes to comply with timing of state code and combining of the preliminary plat with the improvements plan.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Did you hear that, Larry?
Yes,
Okay. Do I have a second?
second.
Larry seconds. And I'll do a voice vote on this. Larry,
Aye.
Cameron,
Yes.
Darlene, I,
Kent, yes.
and Eileen. All right, so it passes. All right. Crystal, can you send me a quick note on his motion? So that I have it for my summary sheet. Is that a possibility?
Sorry, I should have wrote it.
No, that's why I had it written, but that's okay. It was with, let me see if I get it. It was with, the recommendations of Sunrise Engineering, if you could write it down.
I will.
Thanks a lot. Scratch that, Crystal. All right, okay, so now the second item is. Oh, Riker, I don't think we're gonna get to anything else. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to just remind the commission that the draft for the updated neighborhood commercial zone.
Correct. It's in our folder.
Yeah, so just give, when you guys have time, just give me feedback.
Yeah,
and I can
and
make
that's on our list of things to do for January, so it will be moving, right now it's in our December folder, I'm gonna be moving it into the things to do for January folder, and I'll make a copy of that folder, and I'll put it in January. Great, for 2025, okay? All right, thank you so much, Riker. Okay, so item number 3 is discussion and possible vote on an ordinance deleting chapter 42 resort zone from Virgin's Uniform Land Use Ordinance. Is there any further comments or discussion on this item before we vote? Commissioners?
I move we approve this. It's been discussed a lot. And it was just a technicality that kept us from voting on the last night, so.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, and start at this end this time. Lee?
Aye.
Kent?
Yes.
Darlene? I. Cameron?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
All right. And the final item. Kent. And the last item is the calendar I passed out. And that is recommend,
I didn't second it. That was,
Larry?
Yeah.
Larry,
Larry,
thank you, sorry.
okay.
Don't we have to do e-bikes?
Oh, the e-bike ordinance. No, the e-bike ordinance was just heard today. We have to go through our public meeting and then our public hearing.
I see, okay.
All right. Did everyone have a chance to glance at the calendar? It's the same one, just thank you so much. Just remember that starting in, February. See, I'm trying to talk into the mic and I keep hitting it. It's always an issue. Our regular meetings and public hearings are going to mirror the same day as the town council, so they'll be on a Tuesday. And our work meetings will continue to be on a Wednesday. Will be the same weeks, just the public hearing regular meeting will be on a Tuesday. And they will still be at 5:30. All right, I don't know if you were aware of that, Kim. Is that gonna work okay?
Be fine.
Okay,
All right.
all right, so any other comments about, the calendar?
like to
Alright.
make a motion.
Okay, Kent makes a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Lee seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
All right. And finally, I need a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I move we adjourn this meeting.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Larry. Meeting is adjourned at 7:12. See you all